Wait for Brian to click in. All right.
Only thing I will ask is, as I brought up to the board yesterday, we have four, count them, four more to fill for this Rotary year.
All right.
We have, I've got, what is it, May 19, June 16, June 23, and June 30. I've got some feelers out, but if anybody has any ideas, just send them to me and I'll make it work. You know, we'll
I
figure
think the
something
30th
out.
is our 5th Wednesday, so
Yeah, that would be.
you can
Oh,
be
good.
off the-
That gets Howard. I mean Howard off the hook.
yeah. Or delays it a week.
No, you don't understand. It gets me off the hook.
Maybe we should do a survey by email and find out what percentage of us have been fully vaccinated. And we can do a 5th Wednesday upright somewhere.
By
My
end
club-
of June. Yeah.
My
Go
club
ahead.
just did that, and we're going to meet in person again, finally. I think it was 80% of the club members had been vaccinated at that time.
Wow.
Well, I would
I-
think that most of us have been vaccinated. Mitch,
Yeah.
have you? Mitch, have you?
Yep.
I would think by the end of June, all of us would have had at least both shots, you know,
With our
Yeah,
farm,
even before then.
right. Yeah, we have, Randy, we have a pharmacist who's a member of our club that has been able to get the shots and therefore is getting us in line and so on.
Mhm.
within the rules.
Some of us are not as old as some of the others are, so some of us had to wait a little while.
Dave, I put my 4 districts down here. I put together about 15 videos, almost all of them Rotary, that were great or inspiring speakers. And they go anywhere from 10 minutes to 40 minutes. If you, as a substitute or as a program, if you have one of the shorter ones, you get a group to respond to it within the club, and they're set up to do that. But if you like it, I'll send you that list with the links.
That would be extremely helpful, whether it be for this year yet or next year. We're always
Sure.
looking, you know, for something to fill.
They're evergreens.
Great.
There's Brian.
Brian is connecting in. For those that were on the board meeting yesterday, before we reached out to Sister Brenda with the food pantry, she messaged me yesterday
Hmm.
and wanted to know if we were still looking at them for a CAP grant because she figured out a need, and that is a digital scale pallet jack, probably about 1,500. So maybe that and an iPad, she said. So
Digital scale.
pallet jack.
Jack.
They can
So-
weigh the food as they jack it up and move it.
Yeah, and they can. She's supposed to send me specs on exactly what she's looking for. So.
Hey,
once-
Mitch,
Yes.
Mitch, my brother is in the material handling business. I can probably get a line on that.
Cool.
Unless they have something picked out, but even then we may be able to cut a little better deal. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I definitely will, as soon as I get the specs that she is looking for, I will send those over to you so we can do some research. That'd be great. All right. Looks like Jack's here. Welcome, Jack. Maybe audio, not yet. Well, let us. Robinette, where'd
Can
you
I
go?
say
There you are.
I'm here.
Brian, did you need something?
Yeah, just real quick. I just wanted to. I think we've got Ann and Jerry and Bob are going to come and help with the vaccine clinic. And Dave, you had mentioned that you might be able to come after work. Ann has to leave early. Would you want to tag team with her, Dave Muller?
Yeah, I can probably do that.
Okay, cause, yeah, if you just wanna come and then you can take her spot, that would be great.
Okay,
Okay, but, if you can show up around 8:30 and then we can get you oriented, everybody that's, coming in the morning and then, and it's probably gonna go to about 3:30, just so you know.
And when, Brian, when you're done with that, or somebody, send me the number of people and the hours so that we can put that in Rotary Club Central as an additional service project.
Okay,
Brian, it's at Wild Acres, correct?
it's at Wild Acres, yes, I'm sorry if
Okay.
I didn't say that earlier.
Well, that's all right.
All right.
Appreciate it very much, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right. With that, why don't we, Dave, you want to introduce our speaker as you?
I
wind him up?
will be
Alright.
happy to do so. I've known Randy for a number of years, and I would say this, whether he was on the call or not, is a gem of a gentleman. He truly is. He and I communicated about, I cannot remember what, a few months ago, and I happened to have seen on his signature pad about the New Orleans HOC, which I had not a clue that Randy had worked on. I did send you all his bio. He's currently an assistant Rotary coordinator for Zone 31. As he said, he's a member of the New Orleans Club itself. I'm skimming your thing here, the Rotary Club of New Orleans, which is Club 12. And I won't tell you we're Club 23 something or other. So you have us beat by a few years, just a couple.
Well, 11 is St. Louis.
Right. Club 11 is here in St. Louis. So you're just a shade younger than they are. One thing that I thought, we have a lot of educators on this call. I substitute teach. Tom's been on the school board. Jack is a teacher. Ann has been a teacher on the school board. Jerry's retired teacher.
I
One
went
of the
to
things,
school for a long time.
well, yes, Todd, well, never mind. I'll just stop there.
Had to repeat kindergarten like 6 times.
I'm see what happens when you try to get serious, you see where this is going. But one of the things I really, we take this for granted, the internet and everything else. But when you can bring internet service to a school in an undeveloped area, the Sikkim province in India, to me, it opens up a whole new world. I mean, we have enough trouble with the virtual learning that has gone on here in Missouri with all of this, because rural areas don't have enough bandwidth. Jerry has that experience up in Montgomery County. But here's a place that didn't have anything. So I'm going to let him tell the story. You guys have seen the bio. If you haven't, go back and read last week's newsletter. But Randy, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute everybody else, and then you can unmute yourself as needs be.
Okay, thank you, David. If you have a question about that internet, the computer issue that we dealt with at my club in a very remote part of India, you can ask me later on. I am wearing, just to let you know, the international convention. I was on the HOC, and this was our outfit. I walked into my breakfast room this morning and my wife said, "What are you wearing?" But you can see up here, it says, here you go. See the emblem and my name and HOC vice chair and so on. And these shirts were actually not HOC shirts. They're the New Orleans Jazz Fest shirts. We co-opted them. And so members of our HOC had this outfit on. You could spot us walking around. Anyway, it's interesting that Dave asked me to talk about my experience with the 2011 New Orleans convention. I was vice chair of the host organization committee for the convention, and I was appointed by the HOC chair, Subhash Kulkarni, a typical Louisiana name, I'm sure. As it turns out, about 5 weeks ago, Subhash and I received an email from RI president, past president, Ray Klingensmith, who you guys know, reminding us that May will mark the 10th anniversary of the convention and asking that we do something to commemorate it. Now, Ray and Subhash, both being the great delegators they are, suggested gently that I figure it out, which I've been working diligently to do since. So let me tell you a bit about the 2011 convention and perhaps some of my other experiences at other Rotary conventions. I've been to 8. Can anyone top that number here? Anybody been to more? No. Okay, well then I'll continue. Back in 2001 or so, a group of Rotarians in District 6840 submitted a proposal to RI to bring the Rotary International Convention to New Orleans in 2007. A crack team of RI folk visited New Orleans to take a look, including future RI president for 2006-2007, Bill Boyd. I was among those who received them. And as you may know, there is an RI convention committee, which is responsible for the overall convention. And then there's the host organization committee, which is responsible primarily for the local events and gathering volunteers for the many jobs that have to be done. Well, RI chose Subhash Kulkarni, a past district governor and past president of the Rotary Club of Metairie Sunrise. Metairie is the next town west of New Orleans, to chair the HOC. I was incoming president of the Rotary Club of New Orleans. Subhash thought it was important for the New Orleans Club to have a permanent seat on the committee, so he asked me to join. And I knew Subhash, of course. In fact, I was MC at his installation banquet as district governor, and he asked me to be his vice chair. Little did I realize what the term of that office would be. In any case, as time passed, we had several meetings with RI folks who came down to New Orleans to see how we were doing. As it turns out, we were doing quite well. One memorable meeting that we had with the RI team in 2005 was for a 2-day session on a Thursday and Friday in August, and everything was on schedule and approved. The team returned to Evanston, and I took off for the wedding of my stepson in Texas. I never saw that team again. I didn't return to New Orleans for 3 weeks, and that was only for a day. I didn't return permanently for 2 or 3 months later. The Sunday after that Thursday and Friday meeting was when Hurricane Katrina hit. I'm not going to go into my Katrina experience. Everyone who went through it, both directly and indirectly, have their Katrina stories. Those tales are for another day. Suffice it to say that as the full impact was being assessed, RI wondered whether we would be ready for the 2007 convention. Subhash looked at it and said no. I looked at it and said, probably, but when you're expecting 20,000 visitors or more, you can't say you're probably going to be able to do it. You must be able to say unequivocally, yes. I couldn't say that. So we said no. This did not build goodwill and better friendships. It was very controversial. Many in our area thought it important for the region to show the world that we were back. But we were having trouble just locating people. Recovery would take years, and we needed volunteers, lots of volunteers, to be able to do the jobs required. And we needed money, lots of money, to put on the events we wanted to do. And that meant the economic viability of our local Rotarians. No one was certain that this would happen. This was not a universally popular decision, but it was the right decision. RI then had to find a place to hold the 2007 convention. They approached the group preparing for the 2011 convention in Salt Lake City. They incredibly agreed to swap with New Orleans. So Salt Lake City turned around and produced a very good convention in 18 months in 2007. We were assigned 2011. An interesting side effect was that Subhash and I became the longest running HOC chair and vice chair in Rotary history from 2002 to 2011, 9 years. But now we had a whole new group of people to astound with our planning. They weren't overly astounded. In fact, they had major issues. Ray Klingensmith would be the RI president in 2010 and 2011, and Ron Burton would eventually get into the presidential line. He would be convention chair. One of the ideas we had for an event was to create a Mardi Gras mini parade inside the Louisiana Superdome with floats, beads, masks, the whole deal. People could go to the Superdome and be in the crowd and have great food provided for a fee of maybe $65, $75. And they would have a typical Mardi Gras experience. However, we also proposed that we could offer a place on the floats themselves where people would receive a bag or two of Mardi Gras beads to throw to the crowd, as well as a mask, the whole 9 yards, and a reserved area up in a special section of the Superdome for a private party. This could be had, we suggested, for $1,000. Our committee knew this would be a great event. This is what people came to New Orleans for. On the other hand, Ray thought this was a terrible idea. He could hear it now. $1,000? I don't want to spend $1,000 so I can throw some cheap beads to a crowd of drunken Rotarians while wearing a mask. I don't care what food they serve me. I'd rather give that kind of money to the Rotary Foundation. Well, we knew he was wrong, but we compromised. We decided to do a survey of district governors and governors-elect around the world. And the results started pouring in. And it was not close at all. Are you kidding? $1,000 to do what? What a colossal waste of money that could be used to do good in the world. So Crow became the official bird of the 2011 Rotary International Convention. As vice chair, I was primarily involved with the host events. We wanted to give attendees an experience of New Orleans and the region. So to kick things off, we decided to have a concert that featured the great music from the area, including jazz, blues, Cajun, and gospel, the sounds of the South. We had several great groups perform. The venue in the New Orleans Convention Center was set up to hold 4,000 people. We had about 2,400. RI at the time was trying to promote starting conventions on Saturday rather than Sunday, but people just weren't entirely up to the change. So we didn't hit the numbers we expected. But as I look back on it, this was the best of the events we put on. The others were fine. Sunday, we had a great evening of fun, food, fellowship, and fins. It was an outdoor event on the banks of the Mississippi River and next to the Aquarium of the Americas, hence the fins. The food was modeled on our district's food fests, in which at our district conference, each club brings food for the attendees to sample. 6840 Rotarians flocked to this event and then proceed to ignore the conference itself. So we thought this was another great idea that couldn't fail, and it didn't. RI warned us over and over again to manage the crowd that was expected to attend. And the aquarium folks assured us there would be no problem. They had handled larger groups than ours. RI also warned us that we must have enough chairs for 1/3 to 1/2 of the attendees. They kept telling us how old the members of Rotary were. We worked with the aquarium to make sure this was taken care of. And we also had access to the aquarium itself so that we were able to manage crowds, directing them either to the food stalls or the aquarium exhibits. The weather worked out well, no real problems. Host hospitality was on Monday, which was typical of all our conventions, with individual Rotarians, clubs, and informal groups hosting visiting Rotarians from around the world. On Tuesday, we had a French Quarter dining experience where people wandered the quarter, going to specific restaurants for regional cuisine. As it turns out, I did not get to see much of the convention at all. I didn't even get to see Bill Gates speak. As vice chair, I was in the HOC office putting out fires, having to do with everything from registration issues to health, you name it. and there was always something. But I did get heavily involved in one session. Ray knew that my background was TV and radio, so he asked me to MC a panel on Katrina. We had 3 panelists, one CNN reporter who was from the Mississippi coast area of our district, whose town was leveled. A Rotarian also from Mississippi told of the experience of her late husband, who spent much of his time gathering volunteers and donations to help rebuild. And a third was a local writer who actually left the convention center about 15 minutes before we were supposed to go on stage, saying she had to catch a plane, leaving me to try to figure out how to fill up 1/3 of the time we were scheduled for. But it all worked out well. We had expected to have over 20,000 visitors. We ended up with 18,000, and we can point to 2 causes for the reduction. First, a short time before, Japan had experienced that tsunami and the eventual disaster at the nuclear plant. This caused many Japanese who had signed up to cancel. And also at that time, you guys in the Midwest were experiencing torrential rains, flooding the Mississippi, which was all coming downriver towards New Orleans. Now, we have a number of ways to mitigate river waters, so it never became an issue here. But after Katrina, any talk of flooding in New Orleans in the same sentence was cause for alarm, even though the Katrina flooding had nothing to do with the Mississippi. It was a Lake Pontchartrain event, and its flood levees were the issue. It didn't matter. Many people felt discretion was the better part of valor and decided to stay home. Disappointing, but the reviews were extraordinarily positive. The people who came had a great time. Even more interesting, we made money. Many conventions don't do that. We did. We got no government or tourism support. So to get us working capital, we asked our participating districts, Ray's district as well, to help, and help they did. I think we had 5 districts that were co-sponsors. They each chipped in, but our special events were in the black. So we're actually able to give back their donations. I understand a number of you have been to an international convention. Wave your hand in front of your face if you have. Todd, which one did you go to? Unmute. You got to unmute, Todd.
All right. San Antonio, Salt Lake City, New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago.
Okay, great. Who else? Mitch?
San Antonio and Indianapolis.
Okay. Anyone else? Yaha. Okay.
Dave's been to a bunch of them.
Mhm. We'll talk a bit about some. Okay, Tom, 4? 4. Okay. Okay. Well, as I said, I've been to 8. And I love the fact that at lunchtime, you may be seated around a table with a couple from Cleveland here, and here will be a couple from Rio, another couple over there from Bangkok, and a couple there from Kenya. And each person is different. And yet their clubs have the same issues: membership, or PR, or service, or leadership. And generally, you'll hear practically no discussion of politics. Instead, the conversations are about service. Do you want a partner to solve a problem? How can we do a better job than we're doing? At every convention, I learned something special and had great discussions with people from all over the world. The convention in New Orleans showed me the inner workings of not only the incredible coordination it takes to put on a convention, but it also introduced me to many of the great men and women who work at RI and the Rotary Foundation. What I didn't mention was that because of the New Orleans convention, I was sent to 2 conventions leading up to New Orleans to promote it. So I went to Montreal and Birmingham, England. You experience all sorts of things at the conventions, not just Rotary things. In Montreal, for example, my wife and I discovered one of the best Japanese restaurants in the world. We liked it so much, we went back a second time. They recognized us. and they brought out literally everything on the menu, everything for us to eat. In Seoul, I led a panel discussion about the 100th anniversary of the Rotary Foundation in front of 25,000 people, something I'm not likely to experience again. In Atlanta, I got to lead a workshop entitled Service Projects, Is What You Are Doing Worth It? I also had the opportunity of having a hilarious conversation over dinner with a couple from Argentina by way of the Google app. We would talk into our phones and then shove the phones into their faces while the translation app said what we were saying. But I really want to focus on the Brisbane and Birmingham conventions. They were turning points for me. Do you all know what a Rotary moment is? Can anyone define it? Tom, you're nodding your head, but can we hear you now? No. No. Can anyone? There we go. No. Sorry, Tom, it's not working. Anybody define a Rotary moment? Okay.
That
Who's-
when you finally become a Rotarian rather than just a Rotarian.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. For me, and this is similar to what you said, Jerry, a Rotary moment is when, as someone told me, you first drink the Rotary Kool-Aid and you get Rotary. Now, some people have a Rotary moment even before they join. They just understand what being a Rotarian really means. Some people never get it. They may just stay in a club out of sheer inertia. For me, it took a rather long time. My first Rotary moment came at the 2003 Brisbane International Convention. It was my first convention, and I was about to become president of the Rotary Club of New Orleans. And even though I'd been a Rotarian for a number of years, 17 to be exact, I was not what I would call fully engaged. I knew about Rotary through my club experience. I knew about Polio Plus. I had friends in the club, and I was able to raise the visibility of my business because of my association with Rotary. But I didn't quite get it yet. I didn't truly appreciate what Rotary was and what I could be through it. And I did not intrinsically understand the power of this institution. So there I was at the Brisbane Convention in a general session on education with about 5,000 people listening. I had arrived a bit early and I struck up a conversation with the person sitting next to me. I asked the guy what he did in Rotary, and he said he was a district governor. And I asked him about his district. He said his district served 2 countries and 5 time zones. I was floored. I had no idea there were districts like this. I asked how he managed to work with such different areas. He said, other than travel, it wasn't so bad. They were, after all, working for the same thing, doing good in the world, service above self. My district covers a portion of 2 states, Louisiana and Mississippi. There were members of my club, which is in Louisiana, who didn't appreciate those folks in the district from Mississippi. They weren't our kind of people. They wanted RI to move us into the district towards the west of us with people more like us, you know, Louisianians. As I sat there in Brisbane, I thought to myself, here is a district that doesn't cross just state boundaries, but countries and time zones. And he said they seem to get along just fine, worrying more about improving the lives of those around them rather than how different they were. New Orleans is 40 minutes from the Mississippi border. Rotary is inclusive rather than exclusive. We work for something rather than against something. I went back to my club, and how different Mississippians and Louisianians were was not brought up again. That was my first Rotary moment. But there was a second, and it was right at the same session. As I said, the topic was education. Well, my club had done education projects over the years, so I was prepared to be unmoved. You know, been there, done that. They can't tell me anything. The speaker began by asking all of us whose clubs were active in RILA to stand up. And then he asked all of those whose clubs were involved in Interact to join them standing up. Then he asked all those clubs who were involved with Youth Exchange to stand, and he continued with 3 other Rotary education programs. Finally, he asked us to look around and see who was still seated. Out of 5,000 people there, I couldn't see anyone seated. That was when I had my second Rotary moment. When we were standing literally shoulder to shoulder throughout this huge auditorium, we were incredible educational force with as many as 5,000 clubs represented in the audience. And then I realized that we were just a very small slice of the Rotary world. You take this group and scale up globally, and I did some math in my head, we touch millions of people. And then I thought that this was just about our education services. If you add in the other 5 areas of focus, now 6, and all the other local projects we do, we touch millions and millions of people. And in fact, every minute of every hour of every day throughout the year, Rotarians are reaching out, helping people in their communities and around the world. This moment told me about the power of Rotary, and I drank the Kool-Aid about our institution. But what about me? How did I fit in? I couldn't matter very much. I'm just one. Then I went to the convention in Birmingham, England. One of the people there was one of our Rotary Peace Scholars. He was from Costa Rica, and he worked in Brazil. He was mediating between local indigenous populations and land developers. He was working to bring peace and progress to the rainforests. He spoke about what the power of one Rotarian meant to him and other recipients of Rotary Foundation initiatives. Here is how it all hung together and why I drank the Rotary Kool-Aid again. According to the Peace Fellow, even if not one of us had personally used conflict resolution skills with him in the Amazon River Basin, because we had contributed to the Rotary Foundation, each one of us was there. Even if not one of us had personally placed 2 drops of polio vaccine in the mouth of a child in Jaipur, India during a national immunization day, because we had contributed to the Rotary Foundation, each one of us was there. And even if not one of us had personally picked up a hammer or a paintbrush to help rebuild in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, because we had contributed to the Rotary Foundation, each one of us was there. And what does all that mean? What does it show us? That through the power of one person reaching out and joining hands with another, we have the power of 2. And then each of those replicate from 1 to 2, and then another 2 and another 2, and we create the power of many, each of us individually and together as Rotarians. And in doing this, we demonstrate that we take it as an article of faith that we are the living legacy of Paul Harris and believe in service above self. We take it as an article of faith that we're the living legacy of those Rotarians who in 1985 determined that polio could be eradicated from the face of the earth and that we would mobilize to do just that. And we take it as an article of faith that we are the living legacy of Rotary International President-elect Sheikh Armeta's call to serve, to change lives, so that you and I are inspired to reach out to others to create the power of 2. And it's not 1 and 1 make 2. The power of 2 is 2 squared. It's that little logarithmic number that is the power of 2. And 2 squared is 4, and 3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16, and so on. That is the true meaning of the power of 2. It's the chain reaction of opportunities, as President Holger Knock would say, that creates nuclear fission. I believe that is what is meant when you say, if you get one Rotarian involved, he or she will produce magic. But if you get 2 Rotarians involved together, they produce lightning. That is the power of 2, a chain reaction of service And understanding all this, we can say that we, the Rotarians of the Rotary Club of Overland and Rotary International, take it as an article of faith that we believe that the power of Rotary manifested by the opportunities it offers to serve and change lives, that with this power, we can change the world. I thank you for your time and thank you for inviting me.
Randy, thank you very much. I had something I probably did not even mention to you. The club may not remember it, but we were, my fellow governors, Elizabeth Yusevich, who's the incoming director, Sherry Nielsen, and myself, the three Missouri governors, our classmate, and then Greg Lear, who I think you know down your direction.
Sure.
We got together at one of the zones, and my club knows I don't drink. So I was stone cold sober. And we talked about honoring Ray at New Orleans because his Rotary story started in New Orleans going to the Ambassadorial Scholar. And we wound up working on the New Orleans mission to create in one of their second floor rooms, a library.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we saw that was the night we flew in to New Orleans. Everything was done remotely. The brand new, at that time, brand new club of Rotary Club of Riverbend did a lot of the initial legwork for us and so on and so forth. It was amazing, your point, your last point of how you pulled people together. We had volunteers came in from California. They were coming to the convention anyway, but they wanted to volunteer to work on this project. We had others from New York. We had a few from, I forget, I want to say Japan, Taiwan, somewhere. It was out country, one of the Asian countries. It's amazing what everybody pulled together to get done. And it can be done. So
Yeah.
I thank you personally. I thank you for your time, and I'll open it up. Anybody have any questions or comments?
This is your time to grill the speaker.
Otherwise, I'll toss it back to you, Mitch.
Thank you for a good program.
That was an excellent program, Randy. Thank you.
Yes, great.
And will be preserved in
Absolutely.
memoriam or in perpetuity simply because it'll be on YouTube from now on.
There
So
we go. Yeah. All right. Well,
I can tell you about that, the school in India.
Okay.
If I can take a moment.
sure.
A friend of mine discovered that school orphanage in a very remote part of India, in the Himalayas near Nepal and Tibet. And he told me about it. And I took the idea of helping that group to my club. And we had never done, we just weren't a club that did much in international service. And I took it to the board and they jumped on the idea. And I said, what would you like to do? And as usual, they said, you figure it out. So we tried to get a global grant. And as you may know, with a global grant, you need an international partner. Well, this school is in a remote area. And the closest clubs are 5 or 6 hours away over some of the worst roads in the world. So although we got in touch with them and one club actually went and visited them, they never went back and they decided not to be part of it. So we just went on our own. And what we decided to do was bring this school first internet service. And I eventually decided that I had to go visit to make certain all the monies were being spent appropriately and so on. We got them a bunch of computers and a printer and a projector and access to the internet. So it took me 4 airplane rides and 1 helicopter ride to get there. And when I got there, this school, teaches English. It's primarily, that's their function, to teach English to these kids. And they have a bunch of ages, but they're basically 3-year-olds to 8-year-olds. And about a third of them are orphans. And the kids come up to me and they say, where are you from? And I said, New Orleans. And they said, "No, we don't know New Orleans." And I said, jazz. And they said, "What's jazz?" Can you imagine the impact of internet service on these kids? We opened up a whole world, if not a universe, to them. When we do our job right, Rotary changes lives. And that's what we did with this small project in this very remote part of northeastern India. And it's one of the best things that I've ever been involved with.
That's awesome. We had a connection not too long ago with a gentleman that was here, and is Todd still on? No. I forget what part of the country was that we partnered with, and we did solar panels and water collection and lamps that they could take home, solar lamps that they could take home at night, do their homework, and provide light for their family in the evenings.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say I can't remember where it was.
Yeah.
It's been too many years ago for my brain to work.
It was a friend of one of our Rotarians, and he was here in St. Louis at seminary. We were able to partner.
It was in Africa somewhere,
Yeah.
but I can't remember the location.
So that was a neat project. More of a, because you get hands-on, see what's going on. So definitely. All I know is that the first time I went to our president's, so secretary-elect's training, and heard a Rotary International president-elect speak, which we get that at Missouri on a regular basis, and drank the Kool-Aid. That's when you realize it's not about the club meeting, it's about what we do in the world.
And I think Randy can speak to this, and Todd I know would, and Tom would. When you're not at International Assembly being trained for governor, and you're sitting in a room, and there's somebody from Egypt talking to somebody from Israel, talking to somebody from Palestine, talking to somebody, whatever, we get along. It is amazing what can be done when you have the same drive, when you have the same passion, you have the same focus. It really does make a difference. That's what blew me away at Assembly, was the fact that you've got all these people, at that time 532 with the districts. Nobody was arguing politics with anybody. Nobody was talking about how their side was right in this battle and their side was wrong. It's how can we serve humanity in some way, shape, or form. And it does make a difference. It really does. That was brought home to me. My first convention was LA. And then I had Birmingham, skipped a couple years, and was it Korea? Was it Atlanta? And Hamburg. And each one stands out for different reasons. Each one stands out, but what stands out is this is the whole world represented. And somehow we managed to get along. And that is something I wish we could take to. We are slowly, but take it to the whole world. I know I could preach. Sorry, guys. I get on a soapbox, and I apologize. My club knows me enough. So.
No problem. All right, folks. Why don't we wrap it up? Thank you